For decades, we've searched the stars not just for planets, not just for signals, but for anomalies. Those rare moments when something in the cosmos refuses to obey the rules. And now, the James Webb Space Telescope may have found exactly that. What began as a routine observation of the third interstellar object ever recorded in our solar system, 3 Atlas, has turned into something far stranger, far darker, and infinitely more important. Because deep in the vast cold void beyond Mars, the Webb detected something it shouldn't have. Not just light, artificial light, a glow that behaves like no comet or asteroid. A signature that follows no known physics of reflection or refraction. And now astronomers and astrophysicists are left with one question that chills them to the core. What is 3 Atlas really? Stay with us as we dive deep into the data that has just reignited the oldest and most terrifying question of all time. Are we alone? 3 Atlas was first spotted as a faint speck on the edge of the solar system, moving with a trajectory no local object could follow. It was clearly interstellar, born beyond the gravitational embrace of our sun, flung across the galaxy by some unknown force, now drifting silently through our neighborhood. At first, it was treated as a cosmic curiosity like its predecessors, Oumuamua and Borisov. But even in its earliest images, something felt off. Unlike most interstellar objects, 3 Atlas was unusually bright and not in a way that made sense. Its magnitude didn't correspond to its estimated size or composition. It shimmered with an unnatural consistency, its brightness neither fading as expected nor flaring with any sign of outgassing or dust release. Traditional comets tend to brighten in bursts as ice supplements, but this one remained steady as if it were powered from within. Telescopes across the globe turned to observe it, and Webb, with its unparalleled ability to peer into the infrared spectrum, was brought in to decode the mystery. What it saw changed everything. The James Webb Space Telescope, perched a million miles from Earth at the Lorang Point, was designed to see the unseen, to cut through the glare of stars and reveal what's hidden in the shadows. Its gaze upon 3 Atlas was expected to clarify the confusion. Instead, it amplified it. The telescope's instruments detected a centralized thermal emission that didn't correlate with any natural reflection of sunlight. Typically, a comet shines due to the sun's rays bouncing off dust and ice. But 3 Atlas showed an internal heat signature, something that radiated from the core outward. This wasn't scattered light, it was emitted light. The thermal mapping revealed a pattern that followed no known distribution curve of natural objects. It pulsed faintly, irregularly, and most disturbingly, it seemed to cycle at intervals. That rhythm repeating ever so subtly suggested not randomness, but design. Some scientists at NASA and the European Space Agency proposed exotic explanations. Radioactive decay, subsurface friction, alien isotopes. But as more data came in, those theories collapsed. The only consistent explanation left on the table was the one no one wanted to write down. This object might be powered. As data from Webb, Hubble, and terrestrial observatories piled up, a profile of 3 Atlas began to emerge, and it looked nothing like any known celestial body. Its trajectory was too precise to be chaotic, as if it was choosing its path, subtly adjusting course through gravity wells. Its rotation was unnaturally stable, with a tumbling motion that defied standard inertial drift. And its lack of a cometary tail, even when passing near solar radiation, suggested a shell or casing, perhaps something protecting it from the heat. Then came the most controversial finding. The albedo, or reflectivity of its surface, was measured to be nearly perfect in parts, approaching that of polished metal. Not rock, not ice, not dust, metal. The implications hit like a shockwave across the astronomical community. If it was metallic, structured, and emitting energy, then we were no longer observing a natural object. We were observing technology. Suddenly the term probe was whispered in hallways. Beacon, craft, even artifact. The idea that this might be an alien spacecraft was no longer relegated to conspiracy forums. It was now quietly circulating in institutional emails behind encrypted firewalls. Perhaps the most damning piece of evidence wasn't the thermal emissions, or the trajectory, or the strange metallic signature. It was the light. Photo trick analysis showed something chilling. The light coming from 3 Atlas was focused in a narrow spectrum band. In other words, it wasn't a broad natural reflection of sunlight, but a controlled emission of specific wavelengths. This is precisely what we do with LED arrays, laser communication systems, and spacecraft signal beacons. Furthermore, this band included frequencies often used in communication and guidance systems on Earth. Not only that, but the intensity of the light seemed to respond ever so slightly to solar radiation, as though some onboard system was adjusting it in real time. It flickered not at random, but with a strange intermittent pulse. Astronomers ran the data through known signal models. What they got was inconclusive, but not meaningless. Some claimed the pulses resembled binary sequences. Others said it might be a rotating power source. But the conclusion was undeniable. This was not a passive object. It was doing something deliberate, and we were watching it live. As the data poured in, a team of astrophysicists from MIT and Harvard ran a deep signal analysis over the electromagnetic emissions coming from 3 Atlas. At first glance, the frequencies seemed random, just noise scattered across the spectrum. But when they applied Fourier transforms to isolate cyclical patterns, something emerged. Within the static, buried like a whisper beneath the chaos, was a structured repeating pulse too precise to be natural. It wasn't a standard binary, nor a typical modulation used in human technology, but it bore the unmistakable fingerprint of intentional encoding. Some speculated it could be a beacon, a repeating broadcast intended for receivers not of earthly origin. Others theorized it could be telemetry, a constant data stream sent back to wherever this object came from. The unsettling part was this. Whatever the message was, it hadn't changed since the Webb first detected it. It was as if 3 Atlas wasn't trying to talk to us, but someone else. And maybe that someone had already heard it. News of the discovery spread quickly through the highest levels of scientific and defense institutions. A confidential report circulated internally within NASA and then leaked to an unnamed journalist revealed that top officials were already coordinating with global space agencies to determine whether 3 Atlas posed a threat. Some scientists argued it was benign, an ancient probe perhaps centuries old on a pre-programmed route through the stars. Others weren't so optimistic. They raised questions no one could answer. If it's transmitting, then who is receiving? If it has light emissions, does it also have propulsion? If it's here by design, then why now? The report mentioned the possibility, however remote, that 3 Atlas was not just passing through, but observing, tracking planetary alignments, electromagnetic fields, or even advanced civilizations. The possibility ignited panic behind the scenes because if this object wasn't alone, then something else might be on the way. Something that sent it. Further investigation into the luminosity of 3I Atlas led to a revolutionary hypothesis that the object wasn't just emitting energy, it was harvesting it. The way the object's light output fluctuated with its proximity to the sun, combined with its apparent lack of chemical reactions, supported the idea that it might be using a solar collection array or photonic absorption system embedded beneath its surface. Lowe and a group of theorists postulated that the dust clouds surrounding the object could serve a dual function, both as camouflage to mask its artificial structure and as a medium through which to absorb solar radiation. If true, this would suggest that 3 Atlas is a self-sustaining craft designed to travel indefinitely through deep space, refueling itself as it moves from star to star. This concept aligns with known theoretical models of interstellar probes, machines that could remain dormant for centuries, activating only when reaching a star system worth investigating. And if our solar system triggered that activation, then the message was received. As international space agencies scrambled for answers, one truth became increasingly clear. We are not ready, despite decades of speculation about extraterrestrial contact. Our systems, political, scientific, philosophical, are wildly unequipped to process what 3I Atlas might represent. No official statements had been made, but internal documents leaked from agencies in France, Japan, and Brazil all hinted at similar conclusions that this object might not just be an anomaly, but a first encounter in slow motion. And unlike what Hollywood taught us, there was no landing, no sudden appearance in the sky, no immediate answers, only data, only light, only silence. The Webb continues to observe the object every day, and yet every answer it delivers seems to raise 2 more questions. If this is contact, then it's contact on their terms, not ours. Quiet, distant, unsettling. And that may be the most terrifying thing of all because what we're witnessing may not be an invitation. It may be a surveillance, and we may have already been seen. Just when astronomers believed 3I Atlas had settled into a predictable trajectory, something unexpected happened. Its luminosity spiked dramatically. This wasn't a gradual increase caused by its proximity to the sun. It was a sudden flare captured in real time by the James Webb Telescope and confirmed by several ground-based observatories. The object's brightness increased by nearly 40% in under 2 minutes, then stabilized at a new elevated level. No natural explanation fit the data. There was no sign of solar-wind interaction, no impact event, no fragmentary disintegration. It was as if someone or something had flipped a switch. The flare wasn't just visible. It carried with it a change in the object's thermal signature, almost as if systems had powered on. Theorists proposed a chilling possibility that this object had entered an awakened phase. either triggered by its proximity to our star or by our own observations. And if this flare was an intentional act, then it was meant to be seen. Shortly after the anomalous brightening, orbital calculations from multiple space agencies detected something else. 3 Atlas was no longer precisely following its projected path. It had shifted slightly, subtly, but measurably. Gravity alone couldn't account for the alteration. Even solar radiation pressure, often invoked as a scapegoat for small course changes in lightweight objects, didn't add up. This shift was deliberate, and more unsettling, was where the new trajectory pointed, deeper into the solar system with an adjusted inclination that brought it closer to the plane of Earth's orbit. The object was no longer just passing through. It had, in effect, changed lanes. Some scientists cautioned restraint, calling it a gravitational anomaly, but others saw the shift as a maneuver, a subtle course correction that no comet or rock had ever made. And if 3 Atlas was capable of even limited propulsion or navigation, it meant we were no longer observing a relic. We were watching a vessel in motion, a vessel with intent. As the object passed within range of spectroscopic instruments aboard the Webb and Hubble telescopes, scientists began to detect elements and compounds that raised more red flags. Traces of highly reflective alloys, rare Earth elements, and most shockingly, spectral absorption lines resembling compounds never before catalogued in our periodic table were detected. These were not the kinds of materials one would find in a frozen chunk of interstellar rock. They were engineered or at the very least synthesized under conditions not known to exist naturally. One spectral profile matched no known chemical process, but closely resembled theoretical compounds proposed in quantum material labs. Substances thought to only exist under the influence of intense magnetic fields or quantum confinement. This discovery implied either unfathomable age, suggesting the object predates human civilization by millennia, or highly advanced recent manufacture by a civilization far beyond our own. The nature of the materials spoke louder than any signal, because even if we couldn't decode the message, the messenger itself was unnatural. With mounting evidence pointing to a non-natural origin, governments and agencies began reacting, not publicly, but with unmistakable urgency. Encryption levels increased on observatory networks. Research teams were quietly reassigned. A sudden, unexplained surge in satellite recalibrations was noted across multiple continents. Spacefaring nations initiated discreet contingency discussions behind closed doors. One leaked document from an international defense consortium suggested that 3 Atlas might not be a lone visitor, but a scout. The object's unusual structure, its stable rotation, and its apparent capability to remain operational across interstellar distances indicated design consistent with long-term observation probes. But if it was scouting, what was it looking for? And more disturbingly, what might come next? Across universities, observatories, and military command centers, one terrifying consensus was forming. We were no longer alone in the universe, and the first contact might not be a conversation, but an evaluation. As the speculation reached a boiling point, a bold team at the CD Institute decided to take the risk no one else would. They transmitted a focused radio pulse directly toward the projected location of 3 Atlas. The message contained universal mathematical constants, the periodic table, and basic visual representations of humanity. It was meant to be a cosmic handshake, a cautious hello. Days passed, then a week, no response. But just when the experiment was about to be archived as another unanswered call into the dark, one of the monitoring stations in Chile registered something strange. A narrow band return pulse, off frequency, distorted, but unmistakably timed to mirror the original message. It wasn't a reply in language. It wasn't an echo. It was a ping, a return signal with just enough variance to imply it wasn't passive reflection. It had been processed. It had been sent back. But what shook the SETI team the most wasn't the signal itself. It was the timing, because the response came precisely 72 hours after transmission to the second. It meant something had not only received our message, it had calculated the delay and answered deliberately. Following the detection of the return ping, observatories around the globe began experiencing technical anomalies. Webb's infrared instruments showed erratic thermal mapping for the first time since launch, and Hubble's gyroscopic sensors registered micro-fluctuations despite stable orientation. Ground-based telescopes experienced what were initially dismissed as software glitches, misaligned star charts, inexplicable pixel distortions, and frozen data streams precisely when focused on 3I Atlas. But these glitches didn't happen randomly. They occurred in synchronized windows as if coordinated, as if someone or something didn't want us looking too closely. A theory emerged from a Black Ops think tank buried deep within the European Space Agency. The object wasn't just emitting signals, it was jamming us, interfering selectively, The implications were staggering. A passive visitor doesn't hide its identity. A scout does. If the object was actively managing what we could see, and when we could see it, then we weren't watching it. We were being allowed to. And then silence. Within days of the signal event and the technical malfunctions, updates from Webb were delayed, restricted, and eventually rerouted. Public logs were no longer accessible. The European Space Agency released a vague statement about instrument recalibration. NASA simply stopped commenting. Even reputable journals that had been covering 3I Atlas closely began retracting stories or publishing neutral summaries devoid of detail. The astrophysics community was split. Some believed the agencies were working to validate the discovery before going public. Others believed something far darker, that the truth had already been confirmed and was now being contained. The few remaining independent observatories began releasing raw data streams to the public, but these were quickly drowned in a flood of misinformation and speculation. What was once a global scientific mystery had now become a strategic asset, and history has shown us what happens when governments declare a discovery as classified. Truth dies in silence. In a last-ditch effort to understand what they were observing, a coalition of astronomers and mathematicians turned to pattern recognition and probability theory. They weren't looking for communication anymore. They were looking for proof of intent, and that's when they discovered the most terrifying pattern of all. The object's path through the solar system, while seemingly natural, mirrored a Fibonacci arc when plotted against planetary positions, an ancient spiral of proportional beauty found throughout nature, and coincidentally in many Earth-based communication protocols. Furthermore, the timing of its course corrections, the light flares, and even the ping response correlated with prime number sequences. The odds of this occurring naturally astronomically low. These patterns were chosen. It meant this object 3 Atlas wasn't just flying through the solar system. It was navigating with mathematical precision as if following a map or a schedule. A few theorists now whispered the unthinkable. This might not be an interstellar probe. It might be an interstellar message, not made of sound or symbols, but of behavior. And we just decoded the first word. As the dust of confusion begins to settle, one truth remains impossible to ignore. 3 Atlas was never just a rock. From the unnatural light it emitted to the signal it returned. From the rare materials to the calculated change in trajectory, every piece of this enigma points to a single uncomfortable conclusion. We have not been alone for a very long time. And perhaps we were never meant to know. The James Webb Telescope, built to peer into the birth of galaxies, may have instead caught a glimpse of something designed to look back. Something ancient, deliberate, and watching. Not from the safety of a distant star system, but from the threshold of our own celestial neighborhood. And yet silence reigns. The agencies refuse to speak. The data is withheld. The world, it seems, has been deemed not ready. But we saw the light. We tracked the path. And now we ask the question that terrifies even the most rational minds. What happens next? Was 3 Atlas simply passing through, cataloging our little world before continuing its voyage? Or was it merely the first of many? A probe leading the way for something greater. Something waiting for a signal to move forward. In the end, it may not matter whether 3 Atlas was machine or something else entirely. What matters is that it came, it saw, and it responded. And now, somewhere in the cold, endless dark, something may be turning its attention toward the blue planet that blinked first. The countdown perhaps has already begun, and the universe once again reminds us, we are not the center. We are the observed.